Hello and welcome to our third practice video. This is another follow along style video, so we are going to do these steps together today. Now, if you have not cut off the measuring paper from the bottom of your front page, you can go ahead and do that so that you have this paper. We also have extras up in the front. If you ever realize that you've got too much going on and it's getting complicated, you can always go grab another. I would like for you to have your packet flipped open to the practice and notes page. We are also going to take our lesson guide and open to the pumpkin and shoe grid practice. So it's going to show us how to do these things. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about the line drawing section. The line drawing section, so this is on the left-hand side. This is before we come in to start shading. So this is just us trying to get our drawings to be as accurate as possible. Let's go ahead and complete some of these answers. Draw the lines that connect the opposite corners. I'll show you what we're going to be doing for our grid. It's a slightly different setup so that we don't have to use math, which is great. Then you're going to draw a vertical and horizontal line through the X. Next, we're going to use your measuring paper, kind of tight fit, to mark the intersections of shapes along our grid lines. Next, we're going to begin lightly drawing in the main shapes. This one's kind of fun and helpful. Focus on drawing the negative space. When we focus on drawing the negative space, that means that we're looking at the shape of the background rather than the shape of the object. And last but not least, make sure everything in your contour drawing is accurate before moving on to adding value. All right, now let's go ahead and work on adding our grids. So we need to do this grid method to all 4 of these boxes. We're going to begin with a ruler, and we're going to start on the actual images themselves. So let's start on this pumpkin. I want you to make an X over the top of this pumpkin. Do this with me. I line up the ruler so it's not right on the exact corner, just so that my pencil has a little bit of space. And now we're gonna make the X on the box next to it. So let's make the X's here. Let's do the shoe next. And keep in mind as we work through this practice together that if at any point you realize you need just a little more time, that is wonderful for you to reflect that way and to realize your own needs. You should absolutely branch off and work on following along at your own pace if you feel like this is maybe a touch fast for you. No shame in that. I love it when students follow along at their own pace because I know that they are listening to what they need. So great job. So we should have 4 boxes, 4 X's. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to place our ruler right in the center of these X's, and I'm going to use the see-through portion or aspect of this ruler to help me make sure my line is straight. So I'm going to make the box edge line up with one of the lines on my ruler to make sure that it's straight. Then I'm going to draw vertical lines in the center of the X's, in the open boxes, and the center of the X's in the images boxes. All right, so we did our vertical line. Now let's do the horizontal lines. We're gonna do the same, line up with our ruler, And we're putting the line of our ruler along the box edge to make sure it's straight. And as you do this, I would highly encourage you to make your lines as light as possible as we continue. So they don't need to be very dark. In fact, the darker they are, the harder it is to erase when you're done. So I'm just trailing this along. All right, so we basically have like a little asterisk or a star shape in all 4 of our boxes. Here is our last step to complete our grid. We are going to make an X in all of these boxes. So see how we've got in just one of them, we've got 4 boxes. We're gonna make an X by connecting the corners in each of these empty boxes. So we are gonna just go through and match that corner. And I can even do a couple at once. Sometimes they line up like these ones here. Gonna add in these last little corners. We want these grids to be as consistent as possible, so try to make sure that they are the same as the one next to them to avoid any inconsistencies just because of your grid, not anything you did while drawing. All right, now we've got the pumpkin fully gridded. Let's go and grid out our shoe. So we are going to just complete the X's in all 4 of these boxes. And remember that some of them you can make in both boxes. So see how I did the shoe image and now I'm coming into this empty box at the same time. Just a little trick to save you a couple seconds. We're just gonna finish up these outside boxes, adding in that last X diagonal. Remember to be drawing lightly. All right. Now, at this point, we are going to switch over to our measuring paper. And I would like for you to take a moment to make sure your name is on it, your period and table, so that if it gets lost, I can give this back to you. And we'll take a moment, let everyone get to this point. All right, our next step is to use our measuring paper to find all of the outside edges. So we are just doing the outside edges first. So you can see here's an example of the shoe with just the outside edges. Now we are going to go through and draw these using the notes that are in the last page here. So we're going to come through and this is our next step. So we are going to go all the way around the outside edges and make marks for wherever they touch. So I'm going to come in at this point and I would like to make this a little bit easier for you to see. I'm going to take a colored pencil. You do not need to do this part. And I'm going to show you the area that they touch. All of these lines are touching on an outside edge. So I am going to go through and look for all of these points that touch that outline of this shoe so that I can get that shape to be as accurate as possible when starting off. So there's the shoes. Now let's go through and we're just going to follow along and notice that I'm following the shape of the pumpkin as well with the lines and seeing where they touch. So we are just looking for all of these little dashed lines. Okay, now our next job is to relay these dashed lines onto the next side so that we can use them. Now, I would like for you to pause and I want you to really watch this part. Here is my measuring paper. I'm gonna line that measuring paper up so that the edge is right up against the edge of my box. Then I'm going to look and say which lines touch here. And I'm going to draw this dash and this dash. So I want you to do this with me. So we're on the pumpkin, we're on that horizontal line. right in the middle. Give yourself this line and this line. Okay, let's scooch it over. And we're gonna line this up in the exact same place on this box. And I'm going to say, okay, the pumpkin touches here and here. So we're just continuing those lines at the same angle. So I'm lining it up and putting it in the same spot so I know that that's right where that pumpkin touches. All right, let's do the vertical line. Now, I have these marks on my measuring paper, so I'm gonna skip to a new corner because I don't wanna have to erase every single time. So I'm gonna find a new corner that's blank. Do this with me. We're gonna put this in the middle line. So let's go ahead and add just this little curve. We've got this curve right here, and I'm drawing it at the same angle as the pumpkin. Now I'm gonna scooch it over, put it in the same spot in that same corner, and I'm gonna make those lines going at the angle that I saw them. So we are gonna go through and add all of these lines going around the entire outside edge. So I'll do this with you. Let's do the X that's slanting from the top right. We're gonna add this outside edge and this outside edge. Okay, let's go the other side of the X and let's choose a new corner. So I'm gonna flip mine so that I can use this blank corner here. We're starting in the X that is coming from the top left. And I'm just showing the outside edges here. I'm gonna move that over. Go ahead and do this with me. We want it to be in the exact same spot, so make sure you're really careful. And those lines are going at the same direction and angle. All right, so we have done the vertical line, the horizontal line, and both X lines. Now we are gonna go through and do these little short diagonal X lines. So I'm gonna come to the halfway side of the top left X. Go ahead and do this with me. And I'm gonna show myself that the curve bumps out right there. The stem touches right here. Okay, let's move that over. We're gonna put it in that same section. So the little diagonal, I'm gonna add this mark, and my stem coming up. All right, next let's try our other diagonal here. And it really only just touches right where I had it here, so we don't really need that extra one. Now, let's come in for this guy. So let's do that bottom right corner of the pumpkin. Okay, I'm gonna show myself that it comes out here and here. And one more side. Okay, our last little section here. We're gonna move that over. Okay, so let's count. We're gonna start right in the center and we're gonna go all the way around. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh gosh, did I just do that wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Is that right? Oh gosh, I'm not sure. But check to make sure that you have all of your dashes. Now, what we're going to do next is we're going to make the outside edge. So we're connecting the marks here. So it's basically just following the curve, and we're really paying attention to what we see. So we're gonna put our finger right where we're looking at our image. And I'm looking to make sure that I've got these coming out at the right angles, and we're gonna come back in and do some detail work to get that to line up a little bit more. This little part is kind of rough at the beginning, that's okay. And then we're just connecting these marks. And it's nice because now we've got the correct shape and the proportions are accurate as well. Now, when I'm drawing this stem section coming down, I like to make a little skinny triangle right here. I like to look at the triangle shape. So in this section right next to the pumpkin, I'm looking at the shape of that triangle, and that is how I am choosing these lines and where they should go. So again, I'm gonna look at the shape of this triangle, and as I'm adding these next lines right here, I'm not drawing a stem, I'm drawing this red triangle, and I know right where it starts and right where it stops. I see it's kind of like curvy at the bottom and then kind of slants out. So we have a little bit of a top to the stem, and it just comes past that line just a smidge. So there is our pumpkin outline. Let's go ahead and skip down to our shoe outline. And I would encourage you to take a moment to hold your measuring paper, and we're gonna clean all the sides. So I'm just cleaning off all the marks, and I'm not like pushing back because that is how you like scrunch it. So I'm holding it down and then moving the eraser away from myself. So let's go ahead, clean off our measuring paper so that we don't get confused. And this is something you can do at any point. It does not need to wait until you're at the end of a practice. So we are going to go through and let's do this together again. So let's start with the horizontal line. Take your measuring paper. We're going to just draw the angles that we see. So I'm drawing the back of the shoe and like the angle of the tongue of the laces. I'm gonna move it over and add those marks. Okay, now let's do our vertical line, straight up and down. Now we're gonna catch the front, the top with the tongue. We're gonna catch this bottom section for that little line there at the very edge of the bottom. Move it over. We're gonna give ourselves these little lines. Now we've done the horizontal and vertical. Let's do the X. And I'm gonna go from the right side, top right side first. So I'm gonna say, all right, it touches here and it touches here. I'll move that over. Let's do this together. So just a smidge above that line. And here's this bottom toe. All right, now I'm shifting my corner on my measuring paper, and I'm gonna come from the top left. I'm gonna show myself that tongue, where the bottom of the shoe is. Let's move that over. All right, now we have done the vertical, horizontal, X, X. Now let's do our last 4 X lines. We don't have anything touching on the outside here, so we can skip to the next one. And I am going to flip my measuring paper over so that we have a fresh, clean spot to use. Now I'm gonna line up that corner, and I'm gonna say, okay, the tongue starts here, the back of the shoe touches here. Move that over. Tongue starts here, back starts here. Okay, now let's do the back corner, the bottom one. Starting here, ends here. We're just giving ourselves that corner of the shoe, essentially. And let's rotate our measuring paper. Let's grab this front toe edge. All right, now we have our dashed outlines. You can go through and make sure that you've collected them all. I am going to just take a moment to kind of sharpen my pencil here so that it's not too dull and thick as I'm going through and creating this outline. Now let's start by looking at the triangles. I always try to find the triangles that are gonna be the most helpful because triangles have so much information with the 3 different lengths of sides. So as I'm working, I'm looking at that triangle and I say, okay, well, it's like almost that high and then it slants out. So here's where it ends and it kind of like comes at a curve right there and then it's like straight down. So I'm really just trying to mimic that triangle line. Something else I can do is I can put a ruler out and just kind of like move this and see if those angles are pretty consistent. Now that looks pretty good. We've got this smidge of the tongue that like comes up and then it tucks right before this intersection. So let's bring that down, and then it's right on the line, and then it just lifts up a little smidgy. So let's just add this like back triangle. Essentially, it's like the heel of the shoe. Then we've got it kind of slanting out. We're just connecting those dots. Now, as we get to this bottom section, I want you to notice that it comes out a little bit farther past this line. So here is something that's a little bit different that I have not shown you yet. We can take measurements from the edge as well. So if I know that the shoe is this tall, I can go to that measuring point and I can say, okay, it's this far out from the wall right there. So let's take this measurement. I'm gonna line it up with the bottom edge of the shoe, and I know that it comes this far out. It's interesting because see, the difference here allows for this little scooch of a little like boop, boop. And then we've got like the section where that seam kind of starts, and then it's real flat through here. So there is another method of using your grid and measuring paper to help you get the spaces to be accurate. Now let's take a look at the toe. This is another section that is sometimes challenging. I, again, like to refer to the shapes or the negative space around the picture to help me draw it easier so that I'm really matching what I see instead of what I think a shoe should look like. Now I am going to just take another measurement. I'm going to do it from the bottom of the shoe because I know I can place it right where it's going to be in the correct location. So this is right at the bottom of the shoe, and the toe comes out to about here. So let's take that measurement, line it up with the bottom of the shoe, and it comes out to about here. So I can just make that little mark. Now I'm just going to connect these lines all the way out to the corner. Now, something I find helpful is to continue the line on the practice image so that you can see the toe of the shoe. It's kind of hard to tell where it goes without doing that, so feel free to add a little triangle there, or a line. Now, I'm gonna look at the triangle that's behind it, and I'm gonna use this little triangle to help me know if I'm creating this accurately. So I'm trying to make that same kind of like sloped, kind of curving little triangle shape. And then I'm just connecting our last little marks. Now the toe is the last and hardest part. We are gonna just kind of drop this down, bring that up, and kind of curve it out here. I think for mine, I'm gonna lift that corner at the bottom a bit. I think that's what mine needed. All right. Now at this point, we are going to continue working on the interior marks. So we're checking these outside edges to make sure that everything looks really accurate and neat. I can go through and like, if I've got some double lines, like right here, I can erase, and then I'm looking at the image and I'm just doing my best to like lightly draw one line that shows that shape. That allows for me to not have so much sketch line work that's like darkening before I even add my values. So I'm gonna go through and just kind of clean up any lines that are thicker or too dark, because that will impact your value later on. So we're just lightly tracing that shape. Do not erase your grid lines until we're ready for the value step. So any sketchy lines, so anything that's like a double up, needs to become just one solid line. All right, now we are working on finding the interior marks. So let's go through the pumpkin together, and let's take a moment to clean our measuring paper. So we're gonna take our erasers, clean all the marks off. Pull down on one side and pull away. And we want to do this so that we don't start to confuse ourselves. All right, let's begin with the pumpkin. We're going to start at the bottom. So let's take our measuring paper, put it in that bottom corner, and I'm going to just show myself where the stem is starting. So let's move that line over here. Okay, there's where our stem is starting. Now we can just continue going through these lines. So I like to start with this first front section though. I think that it's helpful to start with what's in front and then to work your way backwards for a graphite drawing. Now I started with this height, this first level. So now I'm gonna come over, I'm gonna say, okay, I caught this middle line, let's do the next line. So let's go along this X, and I'm gonna show myself that it touches here, 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 and then we've got these three little sections up here. So I'm gonna just add those right now. So take a look and we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're doing all of the section lines that we can. It's lined up in the corner. So now let's move that over. And I'm gonna just add these lines at the same angle that I drew them. All right, now let's switch corners on our measuring paper and let's do the horizontal line. And we're getting all of these sections, all of the interior details. So we've got an angle for each of these lines that we're trying to copy. So we wanna like have it stay in line with what we see. Now we're just adding those lines onto our drawing. That was the horizontal line. Now let's continue onto the diagonal X, and I am going to use the last fresh corner here. And again, we're looking for every line, like the actual dividing section lines. So for this one, we're catching the top of this little triangle. So we should have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines we're adding. So don't forget this little guy and this little guy. Move that over. And we've got this, 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 and this. All right, so that was our diagonal. Now, let's see. If you notice that you missed this as well, I realized that when I did this diagonal of the X, I only caught those first ones. So I'm gonna go in and add these. All right, now let's continue onto this bottom diagonal, bottom left. Okay. So we're just adding in these little section lines. Let's do this bottom section on the bottom right. Oh, did we already catch that one? I guess we did. Okay. I think that we've got them all that we need. So let's go ahead, and I want you all to take a moment and try to get to this point so that you can make sure you've got all the dash marks that you need, and then we'll continue on together. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we are going to start by drawing this first section. So we've got this front little line, and we see that it almost is like an M shape, like right at the top of this center line. So let's make like the most subtle little M right here. Then we're just slowly connecting the lines that we can see connect. All right, now that's all that we've got as far as the lines that touch for this first section. So go ahead and get to this point. And now I want you to notice down here, let's work on this bottom left corner of this first section. We need to add just a little smidgy coming out of this side. And then it kind of comes up dents a little bit from like the center line here. So there's like this middle line, and then it comes up and it dips up before it touches right here. So we've kind of got a random little curve that we have to create. All right, so there's our first section. Let's go ahead and add the second, and we can see that it's kind of a little triangle shape, and it gets wider as it works its way down. So it's just a little triangle. Let's add this top triangle, and it touches right in the middle of that M. Okay, let's add this little triangle, touch in here, and then these all kind of like lead into that same spot. All right, now let's start on this section just to the left of our center. We are going to really pay attention to what we see here because this is a fairly straight line, kind of interesting. Most students struggle when there is an actual straight line because we think of pumpkins being so curved. So it's important to really be open to drawing what you see instead of what your brain tells you you should see. I'm also denting the bottom as it reaches towards that center. So see how it lifts up just a smidge underneath the pumpkin. So we really want to show those lifts. Now let's go to the section to the right of the center. We've got this little line that kind of hits through here. Starts like this second section almost. Fairly straight line coming down, and then it curves near the base. Now notice that it touches and makes this little triangle smidgy, like right here of the pumpkin. So we want that to wrap around and then to kind of dent in right there. Now over here at the top right, we've got some of our sections leading towards the base. So we've actually got another section that comes out and wraps out all the way to the outside edge. That's this right here. Now we've got this first little section. We've got 3 bumps, so it goes bump, bump, bump. So when we add our pumpkin here, we want to add the bump, bump, and bump. Now for this line for our stem, we see that the stem barely goes off of the other side. So we can just connect that with a little triangle here. Over here, it has a smidge where it like comes out and then it gets to the thickness that it's going to be. Then up here, we've got this line that connects to the stem. And this is leading right towards the center base. We've got just one more section here, and it just bumps. And then before it touches here, it's got a little line that comes down. All right. Now I'll give you a moment to get caught up here, and I am going to go through and work on erasing any of my thicker lines that I need to turn into one. So if it's like really sketchy, I'm gonna erase and just lightly come in and so carefully choose my best line and erase the extra little sketchy bits. So you can go ahead and take a few minutes. Let's go ahead and just clean this guy up. We really want to draw what we see, not what our brain thinks it sees, so really pay attention as you're cleaning up. All right. Now you'll have more time to continue perfecting this, and you can always pause if you would like more time right now. I am going to sharpen my pencil, and let's hop into the interior details for this shoe. So I'm gonna take a moment. Let's clean our measuring paper. We're just holding it down and erasing away from where we're holding. Okay, now let's go ahead and start with the main lines. We're gonna start with that center or the vertical line. And we are taking all of the interior details now. So we need to grab this little section for the laces. We need to grab this little curve. So notice that I'm just completing this little curve of the Nike swoosh. I'm gonna give myself the edge of the white, the stitch line, the bottom of the white, and the bottom of the treads. Now let's move this over. And I'm giving myself the tongue, the laces, the edge of the Nike swoosh, the top of the white, the stitch line, bottom of the white, and the treads. All right, let's do our horizontal line. We're just trying to catch all these details. So I'm gonna give myself that this is where the heel starts, and this is where that stitch comes down. So I'm just like drawing that for myself. I'm also going to draw where the shadow of this section of the laces is at, because that's actually quite a thick shadow. I'm also going to show myself that that's right where the laces are touching. So I almost like finished the little lace X right here. And that's all that touches. So I'm going to bring this over. And I'm gonna give myself that the laces were touching right here. And here was like a corner of it. We had this coming up for the shadow of the laces, and this was the stitching. All right, now we are going to take the X measurements, so the main X in the center. Let's go ahead and we're gonna give ourselves the Nike swoosh shape on the outside of it. We're gonna give ourselves the line of the seam and where the heel is touching. We also are giving ourselves the shadow of the lace and the edge of one of the laces. All right, so I've got the edge of one of my laces, I've got the shadow, I've got the Nike swoosh, I've got the seams, and here is the edge where it's touching. All right, let's do the opposite side X measurement. Here we're gonna get the top of the tongue. It's like got a little padding, so we're gonna outline both sides. We're gonna add the strap and where that little basketball thing is at on the logo. We're gonna add the stitching here, and notice that I'm not drawing like, this is where it comes in. I'm gonna show myself that this is the curve. So I'm gonna give myself that mark. And I'm gonna show myself the white, the stitching, the end of the white, and the tread. So let's go ahead and move that over. So the white, the stitching, the end of the white. Okay, now we have 4 last little lines, our final diagonals. And I'm gonna show myself the toe stitching and more of where the white starts, the stitch, the end of the white, and the tread. All right. Now let's do this back corner. And this again is giving us the white, the stitch, the bottom of the white, and the tread. All right, and our top diagonal here is gonna show us, oh, you know, we don't actually gain that much. We're gonna take the measurement for where the loop is touching. So let's bring that over here. And now that we see that this little triangle connects back, and then we can even measure from the side how far out that loop goes. So I'm gonna measure how far out that loop can reach, and that is how I can make that shape match. All right, now let's go ahead and start with the Nikes. Actually, let's start with the white and the tread. So we're gonna go through, and we've got our little measurements here that show us where the tread is at, and we're trying to avoid the sketchy line. So try to find that one line that's gonna be the best to outline that space. Now we're gonna come through for the stitch line. And I'm just like adding stitches right up next to each other. And it goes right through that intersection of the X right here at the bottom, all the way across, and then all the way out to the toe. Now we've got the white border. So let's give that little line on top. Okay, so there's our white tread. Next, let's come in and add our Nike swoosh. So I like to point out the fact that part of the Nike swoosh is on the other side. So I always use this little curve right here. Drawing that curve helps me to get this to be the right shape. And then it lifts up and touches here, comes just a smidge past, and then we've got a curve. And this comes all the way back to here. And then we've got this angle that comes up for the heel, for the stitching, and then this is the actual heel itself. Now let's take a look at the toe. We've got just a smidge open on this front space before the line. So see this little bit of a smidge of white, then that line stretches, and it's going to touch through here. So we are trying to really pay attention to the amount of space we have for this little curve here. So we're adding in this little white part, and that's right about where this little line comes down and touches. We're gonna add that back section of the stitching, and this is right where that curve is. So I've got my little laces. I might just start by adding these lace X's over the top of each other. We've also got this one right here that was overlapping. Okay, now we've got the tongue coming up, and this part is a little bit flat, and we've got this that comes out on this side. Now, we also need to create the shadow for this, so I'm drawing in the actual shape. We're gonna come in and add the bottom section near the toe. It's got some laces, and it's got one lace that's like rectangular and kind of just right there at the end. And then it doesn't go too much out past the laces. And we've got that shadow right next to it. Now, working our way up, we've got this strap that's going across, and it touches right underneath here, and it comes almost to the end. So we're gonna like draw that line, kind of continuing that heel angle, and then we're gonna thicken that because it's like got a little bit of cushion, and there's a little bit of a gap for the strap, and it comes and touches this diagonal line and drops down. All right, and then at this corner, notice that it's not really a corner. It's kind of a diagonal. It's like a kitty corner. It's cutting the corner. But no cutting corners for you. Okay, now we are just gonna go through and take our time to perfect these outlines. We've also got a couple of small details to still add. This basketball can just kind of be like outlined with the little banner on top and then the wings. And now we are going to go through and add any little details we might be missing. I'm gonna go through and thin out these lines. And the last step, once I have gotten approval, is to come through and you're going to erase one line at a time. So you're gonna come in and you're gonna erase just one line. So say I was doing this vertical line. Now, before I erase the rest, I'm gonna come back through. I'm gonna say, okay, this is where this lace was. And I'm just like gonna go back through and erase and then clean it up so that all of the grid lines are gone. Now that is your next checkpoint, and in our next video, I will be showing you how to add the values. So make sure that you've erased your grid lines, that your accuracy is really high, that you don't have the sketchy lines or dark lines. They should be one individual skinny and smooth line. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that this was helpful, and remember, you can always go back and re-watch parts if you struggled with any portions of this practice. Thank you so much for watching.